My name is Leah, 32 years old, living in the suburbs of Seattle. During my 3.5 years of dating Ethan, I never imagined the most painful moment of my life would happen on my 33rd birthday, right inside my own apartment, in front of people I believed were my friends. I had planned everything carefully, from the warm lighting to the custom cake with silver white icing that read, "A new chapter begins." I thought it would be the perfect way to announce my pregnancy, something both surprising and sacred. My 2-bedroom apartment was small, but with scented candles, soft jazz music, and the arms of familiar faces, the space felt strangely cozy. I wanted my child one day, looking back at the photos, to feel, "You were wanted, you were joy." We invited around 15 people, only those truly close. My best friend Naomi, my married neighbors, co-workers from the company, and even Camila. The girl Ethan always said was harmless. Ethan offered to go get the cake. It took him nearly 3 hours. I texted him twice, and he simply replied, "Traffic." I don't know why I believed him. By 7 p.m. nearly everyone had arrived. I busied myself hosting, hiding my lemon soda in a cocktail glass so no one would suspect. Naomi caught my eye several times. She knew? I'd told her a week ago, sitting in my car together during a torrential rainstorm. Naomi gave me a quiet smile and a glance that said, "Wait for the right moment." At exactly 9 p.m., Ethan tapped his glass and asked for everyone's attention. He stood in the center of the room, wearing that familiar, polished smile. "Today is a special day," he began, locking eyes with me, his voice warm and deep. "Because I have something to give Leah, the woman who's been through so much with me." I swallowed hard. My heart was pounding out of my chest. Was he going to propose? I wasn't ready for that. Yes, I was pregnant, but we had never clearly talked about marriage. I glanced quickly at Naomi. Her eyes were wide, hand clenching her wine glass. Ethan stepped closer and handed me a small box wrapped in silver paper with a navy blue ribbon. My hands trembled as I took it, offering a nervous smile while the room fell into a hush. A few guests raised their phones to record. My heart raced. I lifted the lid. No ring, just a folded piece of paper. I opened it and read the words, "Sharp as steel. I'm leaving you. You're useless. I deserve someone better. Your things will be packed by Monday." I froze. It was like all the air had been sucked from the room. The lights were still on, the music still playing faintly from the speaker. But everything blurred. I looked up. Ethan wasn't looking at me with warmth anymore. His face was cold, stone-like. His lips curled slightly. "We're done," he said loudly. "It was fun, Leah, but I don't want to waste more time." Then he laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh, like he was watching a bad comedy. A few guests chuckled too, thinking this was some kind of joke, a birthday skit. But Ethan turned and walked straight to the door. No one stopped him. Naomi was the first to shatter the silence. She snatched the note from my hand, read it quickly, and muttered, "What a bastard." Then the questions erupted. "Leah, are you okay? Is he out of his mind? Oh my God, is this for real? And me?" I just stood there, my stomach aching in protest. My throat tightened, but my lips curved into the thinnest, weakest smile, like a thread on the verge of snapping. Ethan didn't know I was carrying his child. I didn't know I'd seen the messages he sent Camilla when he left his Apple Watch in the bathroom. And he definitely didn't know I'm the kind of woman who stays calm and finds a way forward, not one who cries in the rubble. I didn't sleep that night. Naomi laid out a thin mattress on the living room floor and said she'd stay over to keep an eye on me. She didn't ask questions, didn't throw around empty platitudes. She quietly picked up the broken glass, packed up the untouched cupcakes, and left me alone at the dining table, where the silver box still sat like a relic of the end. Around 3 a.m., with the kitchen lights off, I was still there, clutching my phone. I didn't check social media, didn't call my mom, didn't open any messaging apps. Instead, I opened my photo folder and scrolled to screenshots. The place I kept what Ethan didn't know I knew. About 2 weeks earlier, I'd gone searching for a stamp in his desk to send thank you cards to my OBGYN. Instead, I found an unsealed envelope. Inside was a Capital One credit card statement, one I had no idea existed. The first page was enough to stop me cold. Four Seasons Resort, Maui. $842.75. Dinner for two. $1,320. Oceanfront suite, one night. The charge date, a Saturday. The same weekend I had flown to Portland for work. At first I thought I was mistaken, but as I flipped through the pages I saw a jewelry store, a boutique flower shop in Bellevue, and 3 Uber charges from our home to a luxury condo complex near Lake Washington. Okay. And then there was Camila. My college best friend, now a hairstylist in Bellevue. The girl who stood by me through the worst years post-graduation. The one I never thought would just vanish, silently in the middle of my birthday party, without a single hug or goodbye. She arrived early that night with Naomi, wearing the purple silk dress I'd gifted her last year. Still bubbly, still chatty, but her eyes wouldn't meet mine for more than a few seconds. Around 8:30, she took a call in the kitchen. When she returned, her face had gone pale. I'm sorry, something urgent came up at the salon. Then she left. Naomi shot her a glare, then turned back to chat with my coworkers. Now sitting here, I can still see Camila's avoiding gaze all night long. I remember the message I glimpsed when Ethan left his Apple Watch in the bathroom. Are you sure she doesn't know? Sent from a contact named C, with a gray heart emoji. I pretended I didn't see it. But now everything was clearer than ever. I stood up, pulled out a slim notebook from the drawer and scribbled across the first page. Plan Phase 1, collect. I never imagined I'd need to confront someone who once meant so much. But with Ethan, I no longer had a choice. I couldn't raise my child in a home built on lies and double lives. I reviewed all the screenshots, receipts, texts, credit card statements. Then I created a brand new Gmail account under a neutral name and sent everything there, a safe place out of reach from anyone. Finally, I opened Camila's Facebook. A photo from 2 weeks ago, a bar night in Capitol Hill. Who took it? No one said. But in the mirror behind her, I could make out the reflection of a man wearing a gray Kenneth Cole coat. The exact same one Ethan wore on our Palm Springs trip. I didn't need more proof. Camila wasn't just a bystander. She was the other lead. I turned off my phone, closed my eyes. But instead of sleep, I saw each step unfold in my mind, how the truth would come out. No drama, just timing. The next morning, I called a locksmith at 8 a.m. The middle-aged man with a calm voice arrived right on time, no small talk. In 10 minutes, he replaced the entire front door lock, checked the balcony door, and suggested installing a small camera if I didn't feel safe. I nodded and paid with my own credit card. The joint card Ethan and I once shared? I'd closed it the night before, right after Naomi had dozed off on the sofa. I wasn't going to let him keep using our shared finances to fund secret getaways and jewelry that wasn't for me. Next, legal advice. I booked an urgent Zoom appointment with Dana, a lawyer Naomi had recommended through a former colleague. Dana looked to be in her 40s, hair in a neat bun, slim glasses, and the tone of someone who's handled hundreds of unofficial asset splits. You weren't married, but the apartment's in both names? She opened, voice sharp but fair. Yes, but I've been paying most of the mortgage the past 2 years. That works in your favor, but to be safe, I suggest filing for formal asset separation, and if you're pregnant, you need to start protecting your and the baby's rights now. I froze for a second. It was the first time someone besides Naomi had mentioned the baby out loud. Something real, but still hidden from the world. I kept my answer brief. I'm preparing. In truth, Naomi was the only one who knew. And I would keep it that way until all the pieces were where they needed to be. By the end of our session, Dana sent over a checklist. Close joint cards, open solo bank accounts, notify the bank to unlink Ethan's name, check apartment usage rights, and organize prenatal medical records. I printed it out and pinned it to my fridge with the owl-shaped magnet Ethan once called tacky. Later that day, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Just one line. I'll come by Friday afternoon to get my stuff, don't be home. I read it 3 times, then replied with a single word. No? 3 minutes later he called. I let it ring. 5 minutes after that, another text appeared. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, I just want my things. I replied. You'll get them, with witnesses. I'm not being alone with you again. Thursday night, I messaged Naomi. She immediately called backup. Lena, my law student cousin, and Trent, Naomi's longtime friend. A personal trainer over 6 feet tall, with arms too big for his t-shirts, and the word integrity tattooed down his bicep. Friday afternoon, as Ethan's familiar Audi pulled in, I was sitting calmly in my living room, gray oversized sweater, hair in a high bun, legs crossed. Naomi opened the door. The look on Ethan's face changed instantly when he saw the 3 of them standing behind her. What the hell is this? He frowned. Trent smiled, blocking the doorway. Just making sure Leah's safe. Things go smoother when you take your stuff and leave. Lana stepped up, holding a clipboard. Here's a list of your belongings. Everything's been packed. If something's missing, submit it in writing. Once checked, sign here. Ethan looked at me. I didn't even glance up from my laptop. This apartment's no longer your stage, I said flatly. He looked like he wanted to say something, but Naomi's icy glare silenced him. He lowered his head and grabbed exactly 3 boxes in 1 suitcase, already placed neatly by the hallway. No one said a word. Only when he placed his hand on the doorknob did I finally speak. You should be grateful I left a few things behind. The ones that mattered I already kept for myself. The door closed behind Ethan, leaving the room, silent but no longer heavy. I exhaled, placing a hand on my belly. I couldn't tell if that heartbeat was mine or my baby. When Ethan showed up at my house Saturday night, reeking of alcohol, pounding on the door and shouting my name, I just stood inside, hand gripping the edge of the kitchen counter. I could hear his voice, slurred, caught between anger and pleading. Leah, I know you're in there. Please open the door. We need to talk about the baby. I need to know the truth. It was the first time Ethan used the word baby. I didn't answer, but I didn't call the police either. I waited until the banging on the door faded, then stopped. Moments later, my phone chimed with a short message. I'm sorry. If you'll allow it, let's meet tomorrow morning at Black Pine Cafe, 9 a.m. You pick the spot. I typed a single word. Okay. At 10 to 9 Sunday morning, I walked into Black Pine Cafe near the West Seattle Ferry Terminal. I picked a table by the window, where the soft morning light filtered through the wooden blinds, making the space feel warmer than I expected. In my hand was a brown envelope, holding copies of medical records, a 3-month ultrasound, and a draft parenting agreement prepared by attorney Dana. Ethan arrived on time. I barely recognized him. His face was gaunt, dark circles under his eyes, stubble growing unevenly. He wore an old hoodie I used to wash for him because I couldn't stand the smell of cigarette smoke it held. Now? It might have been the only thing he kept after moving out. Leah, he said softly, pulling out a chair. Thank you for coming. I didn't respond, just looked down at the mint tea I'd ordered. Coffee had made me nauseous since last month. He started to ask for something, then stopped. Maybe he realized this conversation wouldn't last as long as he hoped. I opened the envelope, took out the documents and laid them in front of him. This is the doctor's info, prenatal appointment dates and the ultrasound images. I'm 16 weeks along. I paused, locking eyes with him. And this is a draft of your responsibilities and rights as a parent. Ethan froze, as if I'd slammed a brick on the table. You really... He choked on his words. You're actually pregnant? I didn't answer. I just flipped over the first ultrasound image. A dark little speck on a black and white screen, labeled 12 weeks, heartbeat confirmed. Ethan buried his face in his hands, breathing hard. A moment later, he lowered them, voice rough. Leah, I messed up. I know. You don't have to say it. But please, let me try. Not to get back together, just to make it right. I want to be there. I gave a faint smile, not out of sarcasm, just because prayers came too late. I leaned forward. You don't become a father with words. I don't need promises. I need action. I pointed to the agreement, clear terms about visitation schedules, minimum financial support per Washington state law, and a requirement for paternity testing if necessary. I won't stop you. But I won't let this child grow up in ambiguity either. Ethan lowered his head, hands clenched. He didn't argue, didn't defend himself. I didn't know if he had truly changed or was just overwhelmed, but for the first time, he was silent, without fighting back. I need to read this carefully. I might have a lawyer review it too, but I'll sign it. I nodded. I was about to stand and end the meeting when he suddenly asked, "Does she know about this?" I looked at him for a long moment, then said, "That's not her concern anymore." Ethan leaned back, exhaling like he'd just taken another hit to what little ego remained. I stood, picking up my purse. "Pregnancy flies by, Ethan. I don't need you to be perfect, I just need you to show up and take responsibility. If you can do that, I won't keep you from being a father. But if you break your word, I won't let this child suffer for it." I left the cafe, head high. My heart was still heavy, but it wasn't shaking anymore. Behind me, Ethan sat staring at the ultrasound photo, like it was the first time he'd seen a life he couldn't control taking shape before his eyes. About 3 weeks after that meeting at Black Pine, I received a short email from Ethan with the subject line, "About the agreement." I opened it, my heart no longer racing like before. The content was simple. "I've read it thoroughly. There are a few points I'd like to clarify, but overall I agree. My lawyer says it's fair. If you're willing, let's sign next week in front of a witness." Attached was an appointment at a small legal office in Ballard. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I opened my task list and crossed out, "Wait for Ethan's response." One more step completed. A few days later, Naomi sent me a screenshot from the Facebook group Dad Circle Seattle area. A post from an account named E. Wallace, beginning with the line, "Becoming a father wasn't supposed to start like this." I sat still for a while, not because I was emotional, but because I started to believe maybe Ethan really was changing. My life, on the other hand, kept moving, stable, quiet, and admittedly a bit lonely. I worked remotely 3 days a week, and I picked up a freelance editing contract for a baby product company based in Minneapolis, referred by one of Lana's friends. Mornings were for emails, afternoons for resting, checkups, and on Thursdays I attended a prenatal class at the community center near Lincoln Park. That's where I met Clara, a single mom a few years younger than me. She told stories with a spark in her eyes and always carried a water bottle that read, "Built tough, raised strong." My small bedroom began to transform. The old file cabinet was pushed into the hallway to make room for a white wooden crib Naomi had helped me find through a local resale group. I assembled it myself one rainy afternoon. Took nearly 4 hours and 12 mismatched screws. But once it was done, I sat quietly beside it for a long time, hand resting on my now slightly rounded belly through a soft cotton shirt. Ethan began sending monthly support payments on time with no conditions. I didn't reply to thank him, but I didn't reject them either. One day, while editing an article, a message popped up from Ethan. "Can I help buy the baby's car seat? Just send me the link to the one you want." No request to visit, no prying into my personal life, just a direct, practical question. I sent him a link to the model I'd already picked, a basic, safe, reasonably priced option. 5 minutes later, I received a confirmation email from Target, purchased under Ethan's name. That evening, I reread my pregnancy journal. At week 19, I'd written, "I don't know where Ethan will stand on this journey, but I know I'll be here, ready to do it alone, if I have to." Now I wasn't entirely alone anymore, I was still leading this, but he, slowly, and after many wrongs, was starting to catch up. Once, as I was folding baby clothes into the dresser, another message arrived. "Can I come with you to the next ultrasound?" I thought about it for nearly 10 minutes before replying. "Only if you're on time and you respect boundaries." He responded with a single word, "Understood." On the day of the appointment, Ethan arrived 10 minutes early. It was the first time I'd seen him wear a proper button-down shirt since the breakup. In the ultrasound room, he sat silently, eyes glued to the screen. When the doctor pointed to a blurry shape and said, "That's the baby's hand," Ethan lifted his own to his mouth, completely choked up. I said nothing, but I heard the sound of our baby's heartbeat, echoing in a room where, at last, we were both truly listening. Quiet, focused, present. That weekend, I received a small package. No name on the label. Inside was a soft leather journal, no logo, no decoration. Tucked into the first page was a handwritten note. Or the stories you'll want to share with the baby. I don't know how to make things right, but I know where to begin. I closed the notebook and placed it on my desk. I didn't reply. Some apologies don't need words. Just proof. I didn't expect to see Maria again so soon, but life has a way of arranging confrontations no one plans. That Friday afternoon, I went to the Target near West Seattle's town center to pick up a few things for the nursery. At 22 weeks pregnant, my legs were beginning to ache after walking, but at least my spirits were steady. I was fumbling around the diaper aisle when I heard a familiar voice behind me. Leah? I turned. Maria, standing less than a meter away holding a shopping basket. Her eyes widened like she'd just seen a ghost. Still the same slender frame, dark brown hair tied back, but the look in her eyes had changed. No trace of the soft arrogance from my birthday night. Just tension and quiet guilt. I nodded slightly, keeping my tone even. "Hey," I said, "long time no see." She paused, then glanced at my belly, a flicker of surprise, but not shock. "I heard," Maria said softly. "Leah, I know I don't have the right to say anything, but I'm sorry for everything." She swallowed, her eyes a little red. "I didn't know you and Ethan were still together when we started. He said you two were only living together because of the lease. Said you were distant, didn't care anymore, and that he felt trapped." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to confirm. "When I found out the truth," she continued, "I walked away. But it was too late. That relationship, it was never healthy, and I lost a lot." She hesitated, then added something that made me pause. "Ethan got let go from his job 2 weeks ago." I frowned. "Why, I'm not sure," Maria said. "I just heard he misused a company advance, maybe not bad enough to be sued. But they didn't want someone like that around during layoffs." I exhaled slowly. No matter how well Ethan could lie, financial reality had a way of exposing the truth. "You should know," Maria continued, her voice nearly a whisper. "He's not who he pretended to be, and you deserve the truth, even if it came late." I stayed silent for a moment, then finally I said, gently but firmly, "Maria, I don't hate you. I used to. But then I realized you were just another person, manipulated, just like me." Maria's eyes welled up, but she didn't cry. She nodded. "I won't bother you again. I just wanted you to know I've learned my lesson." I glanced down at her cart. Inside were a bottle of lotion, a pack of tissues, and an XL men's hoodie. No need to ask who was staying in her old apartment now. Quietly I said, "I hope you know the way out before it locks behind you." Maria gave a sad smile and didn't respond. She turned and walked away, her figure strangely subdued. No longer the woman who once held a wine glass at my party, looking me in the eye while playing the role of guest. Now she was just a remnant of a war someone else started. That night, I sat down to go over my finances again. If Ethan had truly lost his job, his monthly support might be at risk, but thankfully I had backup plans. My personal savings were intact, and I'd just signed a new 3-month contract with the company in Minneapolis. Enough to cover all essential costs until the baby arrived. I didn't plan to tell Ethan about running into Maria. If he'd really changed, he'd tell me himself. If not, I'd learned to stop waiting for warnings. I sat down and opened the leather notebook Ethan had once sent me. The first page was still blank. I wrote the opening lines slowly and with purpose. "My child, the world may not be perfect, but I will never let you grow up in the shadows of lies." I gave birth to Avery on a late autumn afternoon when the maple trees along the road to Highline Hospital were ablaze in red. 32 hours. That's how long I was in labor, soaked in sweat, gripping the bed rail, feeling like my body was splitting in half. I used to think I was strong, but no podcast, no prenatal class could have prepared me for that feeling. Agonizing, sacred, and utterly overwhelming. Naomi was by my side the entire time. She was the one rubbing my back, swapping cold towels, whispering in my ear when I was ready to give up. He arrived when I was nearly 10 centimeters. He brought a massive teddy bear and a bag of orange juice. I don't know what kind of resort he thought I was staying at, but at least he showed up. He sat quietly in the corner of the room, saying nothing. Each time I screamed through a contraction, he just clenched his fists, trying to make up for it in silence. And when Avery finally cried, her first sharp wail echoing through the room, I turned my head to look at Ethan. He cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just silent tears streaming down his face, red-eyed, lips pressed tight. It was the first moment in months that I believed him. The nurse placed Avery on my chest. Her skin was soft and warm, eyes closed, mouth puckered as she learned to breathe. I didn't say a word. I couldn't. My heart felt like it was going to burst, but my mind was blank. Avery, mine. The first week postpartum was chaotic. My breasts ached as my milk came in, and I was beyond exhausted from sleep deprivation. But what kept me from breaking down was Naomi's steady presence. She showed up every morning with decaf coffee and that patient smile. She helped with diaper changes, washed bottles, rocked Avery to sleep while I stole 5 minutes of rest. Whenever I broke down or muttered that I was a terrible mom, Naomi would say, "You're doing better than you think." Ethan visited 3 times a week, just like we agreed. Sometimes he brought diapers, sometimes tiny baby outfits. One time it was a bottle of organic baby shampoo. I'd only mentioned it once in class and I was surprised he remembered, but I reminded myself. This wasn't the time to reassess the man who once left me. It was time to draw a firm line. He didn't stay long. He played with Avery, asked a few questions, and left. Occasionally I'd catch him glancing around the apartment. The place he once called home. At the white crib, the burp cloths drying on the balcony, and his eyes darkened. Regret, maybe? Or simply the realization that something had changed forever. By the end of the month, I got word that Ethan had found a new job at a distribution center in Kent, not an office gig like before, but in his message he wrote, "More stable, not great pay but enough to stay on track with support." I replied with 3 words. "Good for you." It wasn't encouragement, it wasn't sarcasm, just a fact. I needed Ethan to grow up, not so I could forgive him, but so Avery wouldn't grow up with a part-time dad. One morning while folding clothes, I found the giant teddy bear Ethan had brought to the hospital. It took up half the armchair and was completely useless, but Avery loved to nap against its belly whenever I needed a moment to clean bottles. I didn't throw it away, because even if it symbolized a messy beginning, it was part of the story I would someday tell my child. When Avery turned 1 month old, Ethan and I brought her to the doctor together. We sat on opposite sides of the waiting room. He didn't touch me. I didn't speak first. But when Avery was weighed, measured, got her shots, and started crying, Ethan reached out first, held her, gently, patted her back, and softly whispered, "It's okay, sweetheart, Daddy's here now." I stood nearby, not interrupting. Watching the 2 of them, I felt my heart ease. Not because I loved him again, but because I believed I had made the right choices, keeping the baby, keeping my autonomy, and keeping a chance to become a mother in the light, not in conflict. I saw Eli again right when Avery turned 2 months old. He was still the familiar delivery guy from the local grocery store, the one who used to carry in packs of bottled water when I was hugely pregnant and hadn't yet learned how to accept help without guilt. This time he showed up on a Saturday morning, just as I had Avery strapped to my chest, trying to lull her to sleep with soft piano music playing from my phone. Eli smiled when he saw me opening the door with one hand, the other still holding an unwashed baby bottle. "Looks like it's a busy day," he joked. I sighed, a little embarrassed. Honestly, every day is like this. He didn't come in, just set the grocery bags down on the porch. Then, after a brief pause, he pulled a small card from his jacket pocket. "Happy 2-month birthday to the little one. I didn't know what to get for a newborn, so here's a gift card to a toy store. Hope she finds something she likes later." I looked up, surprised. It had been a while since someone remembered one of my baby's milestones. Not out of obligation, but out of care. I smiled, thanked him, and on impulse invited him in for tea. A gesture I hadn't planned, but when Eli shrugged with a soft smile and nodded, I didn't regret it. Ha ha ha! That tea turned out to last longer than I expected. Eli sat on the bar stool in the kitchen while I held Avery, chatting and timing her next feeding. He shared stories of going back to school to finish his environmental science degree, his late-night delivery shifts to cover tuition, and how he helps his sister take care of her twin boys. Nothing glamorous, but warm and honest. Rare in a world where everyone tries to polish their lives with flashy success stories. Being a single parent must be hard, Eli said quietly, his eyes on Avery dozing against my shoulder. I smiled, part agreement, part contradiction. It is, but not as scary as staying in the wrong relationship. The baby, she's the easiest part of this whole journey. Eli nodded as if he understood. And strangely, his presence, unassuming, never pushy, made me feel seen, not judged. We started talking more often after that. Now and then Eli would text asking how Avery was doing, sometimes sharing a funny story about the kids he helped watch at his sister's. One time he sent me a podcast link on household recycling with infants with the note, "Kinda nerdy but interesting." I didn't finish the episode, but I smiled the whole time I was making the formula. He never tried to insert himself into my life, never texted late at night, never asked for personal details, and never called unless I initiated it. That, more than anything, made me feel safe. One early winter afternoon, when Avery had just learned to roll over and wrecked all plans for nap time, I sent Eli a photo of her grinning from ear to ear with the caption, "My noisy little masterpiece." Less than a minute later, he replied, "She's so adorable it makes you want to rebuild the whole world just to keep her smiling." I read that line over and over. There was no hidden meaning, no exaggerated romance, but it was enough to make my heart soften. Naomi was the first to notice something had shifted. "You're wearing color now," she said, pointing at the olive green cardigan I had on while carrying Avery out of the room. I pretended not to understand. "What do you mean?" "The last time you wore anything other than gray or black was before that disastrous birthday. Now, you're coming back to life." I smiled. Didn't argue. She was right. I was still a single mom. Still budgeting carefully to get by. Still changing diapers in the middle of the night and rocking my baby back to sleep when sirens startled her awake. But I no longer felt empty every morning when I opened my eyes. Not because I had fallen for Eli. Because I knew that if I ever love again, it would be because I want to, not because I need to. I held Avery in my arms, kissed her gently on the forehead, and wrote in the small notebook on the table. "No one can change the past. But you, my child, are the reason I believe in a new chapter. And if someone enters our lives, they will have to learn to love you with the same respect I've given, to protect you." 1 year after the day everything collapsed, I threw another birthday gathering. No grand setup, no crowd, no 3-tier cake or twinkling string lights, just a warm afternoon in early November, inside my small apartment, surrounded by those who stayed, not out of politeness, not from habit, but out of genuine care. Naomi held Avery, a now almost 1-year-old, chasing her around the room with cookie crumbs still stuck to her fingers. Lana arrived a bit late, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers picked from the park up north. She set it down on the table and said, "Big sis, you look like someone who's built a real home." I just smiled. Eli came too, no longer the delivery guy waiting at the door, but the quiet companion who had walked beside me through every transition these past months. He brought a box of lavender tea and a children's book. "Happy birthday to Avery's mom," he wrote inside the cover. Nothing more, nothing less. We didn't label our relationship. I didn't need to. He didn't push. Between two grown-ups who had each stumbled, sometimes silence is the deepest form of respect. While everyone was preparing tea, the doorbell rang for the 4th time that day. It was Ethan. I wasn't surprised. He had texted earlier saying he wanted to stop by to wish me a happy birthday and, if allowed, leave a small gift for Avery. I opened the door. He wore the same gray coat he'd had on when he took me to the hospital last year, his hair neatly trimmed and no longer carrying that lost look he had the first time we met, again, after the breakup. "Hi, Leah," he said, holding a small box tied with a simple ribbon. "Just a few minutes." I nodded and stepped aside to let him in. Avery saw him and squealed, "Children don't remember who hurt whom. They only remember who once flew them around like airplanes." Ethan smiled, bent down to kiss her forehead, then turned to me and handed over the box. "I know nothing can change the past," he said slowly, but I hope this gift shows a bit of growth. I opened the box. Inside was a slender silver bracelet, its charm set with a small emerald. Avery's birthstone. On the back, engraved, "New Light, AVYW." I looked at him, no tears, no need for forgiveness, just a gentle look, enough for both of us to understand I had forgiven myself first. He left afterward. He didn't linger, didn't intrude on a space that no longer belonged to him. And I knew that was the right way for him to show up now. That night, after everyone left and the apartment was quiet, I sat back at the table and slipped the bracelet onto my wrist. Not to hold on to the past, but to remind myself that I had moved beyond it. I looked around. Avery sleeping soundly in her crib, bottle placed nearby, the soft nursery lamp casting a warm glow over the sage-green walls I had painted myself, at 7 months, pregnant. The bookshelf had a few new titles, my laptop was still open to a freelance contract for next month, and on the kitchen counter sat a half-finished cup of lavender tea. I was no longer the woman holding a breakup note in hand, frozen in place at her own birthday party. I was a single mother, a woman who had learned to love herself before entrusting anyone else again, someone who knew that being broken didn't make you smaller, it teaches you how to choose yourself again. I opened the notebook and wrote the final line of the day. Sometimes, the worst thing that ever happened becomes the perfect excuse to grow into the best version of yourself. Not for anyone else, but because you deserve it. I closed the notebook, turned off the lights, and held Avery in my arms. Leah's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the most painful falls open the door to true freedom and self-worth. Betrayed, humiliated, and abandoned, she didn't crumble. Instead, she stood tall, raised her child alone, took control of her finances, and rebuilt her life from the ground up. Amid heartbreak, Leah didn't choose revenge, she chose growth. Her journey proves that women aren't weak when they let go. They're at their strongest when they know they deserve better. What do you think about Leah's journey? What would you do if you were in her shoes? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to follow the channel to discover more heartfelt, true-to-life stories about love, family, and resilience.